Good morning. Today I'm going to be reading about a saint, Saint Anthony of Egypt. Now he goes way back to the years 251 to 356. He starts out, he's a relatively young kid, and his parents die. He's only 18 years old, and it turns out they leave him a considerable estate, such that he has to take responsibility for this and his younger sister. And not long after this, he heard a gospel in church where it said, "Go sell what you possess, give to the poor, and you will have riches in heaven." Now, he felt when he heard these words that the gospel reader was reading them to him. He felt like, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible." So he did just that. He went off and sold most of his possessions. He kept enough to be able to take care of his younger sister, and he got a small place on the edge of town. He goes to church later and hears another expression. It says, "Do not be anxious about tomorrow." And then he started to regret even the little bit that he had kept. He got his sister all set up with some people that would care for her in a convent type setup. And he went off into the wilderness. And in the wilderness, you would think, oh, well, if you go off in the wilderness and pray, well, certainly you're a holy fellow. But the truth is, if you go by yourself, this is true even in ourselves if we go to pray, and let's say you're just going to say, all right, now I'm going to stop, I'm going to pray, I'm going to be holy. And what happens in that silence, in that quiet, is the greatest temptations of all come up. All the things from within that have been hidden behind our busyness come forward. Anthony will spend 20 years alone out in the desert, contemplating God and trying to fight off these devils that have come after him. And following this long period of time, now he's gardening and doing little things, but he's basically just trying to pray to God for 20 years. And after this time, they said he came out with this just like incredible sense of peace, a sense of good health. The fellow that wrote up his story says that he had all good teeth at this point. Well, perhaps he hadn't eaten any sugar. But anyway, he then has a whole series of people that come out recognizing him as a holy man, and they want to be followers of him. And so these others join him, and they become known as the Desert Fathers. And because they've sat and they've worked on wisdom and everything else, the sayings of the Desert Fathers are still shared. I have a book by Thomas Merton in which they're shared. I have a book by Henry Nouwen, and Henry Nouwen does a lot of good things with talking about the way the Desert Fathers approach spirituality. Henry Nouwen has a book that talks about solitude, silence, and prayer. And so he would be instructing these gentlemen that came out that try to get in holy and such. And he'd tell them, well, you have to get into solitude. And they'd say, solitude? We've come all the way from city. Here we are alone. How can we be more in solitude? He said, no, you need solitude from this. And after a solitude, you need to silence yourself. One of the Desert Fathers says something to the tune of, you can't, let me just see if I can see this here. Just as it is impossible to see your face in troubled waters, so also the soul, unless it is clear of alien thoughts, it is not able to pray to God in contemplation. So often we're filled with our own thoughts and our own ideas and such, and we can't just totally quiet out, just totally be there for God. And he provided a model. It is a model for the fact that we write about saints. So the Saint Ignatius that, did I say the name right? Where is his name? Saint Athanasius, who wrote about him not so much that people would say, oh, he's wonderful, but it gave you the idea that, hey, if he can do something and break through, maybe I can too. St. Augustine, who lives about 30 years after, he has taken up with the story, and he's just so inspired. And he said this is St. Augustine, we were astonished to hear the wonder you had worked so recently in our own times and witnessed by so many in the true faith of the Catholic Church. So it's like, if you see someone that can do it, that can really get there and really experience something of God, well, it kind of says, well, it's possible for me too. Now, they'll have many good things, and you'd wonder, well, out in the desert and without any resources, how can they do it? And a certain philosopher asked St. Anthony, Father, how can you be so happy when you are deprived of the consolation of books? And Anthony replied, my book, O philosopher, is the nature of created things. And any time I want to read the words of God, the book is before me. There's something of God that's very available to us. Let us see something of God today, in our day. Let us enjoy it. And think of Anthony going off, leaving everything, and just catching to it. We can, in any moment, without doing any financial change at all, we can leave everything. Our thoughts, our concerns, our plans for the day, we can leave everything behind, silence ourselves, and then, in that moment, sink down into a prayer in which there are no words. May you have a good day and be blessed in the process of seeking a good prayer.